Muted. Hello there. Monkey Madness, how you doing? I saw that you had sent a couple of messages on Roll20. I had work today, so I haven't read anything today on there. Okay, getting close. Alright, we'll go ahead and cut to the background music. And we're going to make sure we are recording. We are? Okay, good. And welcome everybody to Monster Monday for December 21st, 2020. I am your host, DM Gallibond. Now, I know that a lot of you like dwarves. And a lot of you think of dwarves as these jolly, happy people that work in the mountains and drink ale and make a lot of stuff. But tonight we are going to talk a little bit about an alternate history of dwarves and dwarf adjacent creatures, if you will, to borrow a term from the great Jerry Hulkins. We're going to talk a little bit about dwarf adjacent creatures, on tonight's edition of Monster Monday. It's a creature that's been around for a long, long, long time and has a really interesting and divergent lore about it over the history of the different editions of the game. Because tonight, friends, we are talking about the Azer. Now, the Azer, you may not have heard of Azer, but they have been there for a long time, tucked away in their own little corner of the multiverse that makes up the cosmology of D&D. And depending on which edition you first encountered the Azer, you may have a very different opinion of them than people who encountered them in a different edition. Because unlike a lot of creatures who have fairly good continuity in terms of who they are, where they've come from, what they're doing in the multiverse, Azer they kind of get put over here and they kind of get put over here, and then they have this going on and they have that going on, and they don't, all the versions of them don't mesh, which is kind of nice because then if you're a DM, you get to pick and choose which bits of lore about the Azer you want to use if you're going to feature them in your campaign. All right, so as we always do at the top, we want to talk a little bit about Mo over at the tabletopbellhop.com. If you are a fan of any kind of tabletop games, go see Mo over there. He's got everything about tabletop games, a whole galaxy of podcasts and reviews and industry news and upcoming games and places you can buy games, whether you want party games or card games or board games or tabletop RPGs, whatever it is. Mo over at the Tabletop Bellhop has it for you. All right, and if you really like everything that we're doing across all social media platforms, there is a Patreon over at patreon.com/DM Gallibond. And let's meet the Azer. And as we always do on this show, we're going to start by looking at the current incarnation of the monster. Then we'll kind of go back and look at their history. So this is an image of the Azer from 5th edition. And a description of the Azer from 5th edition. In appearance and manner, an Azer resembles a male dwarf, but this is a facade. Beneath its metallic-looking skin, an Azer is a being of fire, which outwardly manifests its fire in its fiery hair and beard. Azers don't reproduce. They are each crafted from bronze by another Azer and imbued with a portion of the crafter's inner flame. Each Azer is sculpted with unique features, and this crafting process limits the growth of the Azer population and is the primary reason that these creatures remain rare. Okay, that is the Azer from 5th edition. Well, that's the description of the Azer. Now let's go back and kind of look at the lore of what D&D has said about these creatures going back to the beginning of their incarnation. They were first introduced in AD&D, or First Edition, for those who count things that way, which that came out in the, I believe in the 1980s is when First Edition launched. So, according to AD&D, the Azer are a race of humanoid creatures inhabiting the elemental plane of fire. And their ruler is called Amemon, I believe. And they're common on their own plane, but they are never seen elsewhere unless brought by summoning. Okay, so already you have on the one hand, we've been told they're crafted. On the other hand, now they're a whole race of people. Okay, Amemon is the legendary king of the Azer. He is the largest, strongest, and most intelligent of all his kind. His nobles number anywhere from 8 to 32, being only slightly less superior. Amemon has 35% magic resistance. Noble Azers have 25%. Other powers of these creatures are currently unknown. And this is an image of what the Azer were depicted to look like in the first edition Monster Manual 2, which is where they appeared. So they weren't a straight out of the box monster in first edition. First edition had kind of gotten long in the tooth before these guys showed up when they got around to putting out Monster Manual 2. Now, that whole magic resistance thing, the other older editions of the game had different things like that. So that means that if you cast a spell, the Azer gets to roll a percentile die, and if it's 35% or lower, the spell just doesn't even affect him. It doesn't even have to make a saving throw. No effect at all. So it just completely resists any effect of the spell. So they didn't show up in second edition. They kind of got skipped by second edition, or at least in any of the second edition references that I have. But they did show up again in third edition. And here's a little twist on what they are in third edition. Azers are dwarf-like beings native to the elemental plane of fire. They wear kilts of brass, bronze, or copper, and they speak Ignan and Common. Ignan is the native language of the elemental plane of fire. Azers maintain a tightly regimented society in which every member has a specific place. The state always takes precedence over the individual. Azer nobles are prodigiously strong and wield absolute power. Azers dwell within bronze fortresses on their home plane, only rarely visiting other planes to gather gems. They hate Ifrit, with whom they wage an eternal war for territory and slaves. Okay, so now according to third edition, they are slavers. Okay. So again, the lore kind of diverges. And they are tightly regimented. Well, in 5th edition, we learned that they're crafted out of bronze and each given individual. Now they're kind of mindless drones of the state. Okay, all right, whatever. You see where I'm going with this? You have so many different bits of lore that you can choose from if you're going to introduce Azer into your game. And now in 4th edition, for those of you who aren't familiar with the various different editions of the game, there was kind of an evolution that started with original D&D, went to AD&D 2nd edition and 3rd edition, and you could sort of see how the game evolved. 4th edition, they said, let's scrap everything we've done, start with something completely different. We will use some of the same names, but other than that, mechanically, 4th edition is completely different. And there were a few people that said, oh, okay, I like this. A lot of people said, ooh, I don't like this. And so 5th edition is much closer than to what 3rd edition was. It's kind of an evolution off of 3rd edition. 4th edition, for all I know, it's just kind of gone off and died somewhere, and they may come back and pick up something from that again for a future edition. It wouldn't surprise me if they do, but for now, it's just kind of off over there in left field by itself. But in 4th edition, we learn about the Azer. They are fire-infused dwarves, and they often serve fire giants or fire titans either out of obedience or devotion. However, some Azers live free and pursue their own goals for good or evil. Now get this, long ago, all dwarves were slaves to the giants and titans. Today's dwarves are the descendants of those who freed themselves. Azers are dwarves that did not escape captivity before they were corrupted and transformed into fiery beings by their overlords. Although a few have escaped captivity since, most Azers remain bound to their fire giant masters to this day. So yet another explanation about where Azers came from and what Azers are. So we've seen 4 different editions of the game, 4 different explanations or origin stories for the Azer. I swear to God, I think the Azer must be a member of, the what is it? Member of the Justice League or something, with all of the origin stories that they have. Every time you turn around, they're getting another Justice story, or another origin story, I should say, about where these guys came from. All right, and now circling back to 5th edition. Uh, what do we learn about Azer lore in 5th edition? Well, first of all, they are native to the elemental plane of fire. So, no, they're not dwarves that were enslaved to giants, like 4th edition says. They are natives of the elemental plane of fire. They are master crafters, expert miners, and sworn foes of the Ifrit. Oh, okay, well, at least that's consistent. Volcanic dwellers. Azers dwell in a kingdom on the border between the elemental plane of earth and the elemental plane of fire, a range of mountains and volcanoes whose spires rise as a series of fortresses. Beneath mountain peaks, under volcanic calderas, and amid rivers of magma, Azers extract gleaming metals and glittering gems from the earth. Squads of Azer patrol the passes and tunnels of their realm, fending off the salamander raiders, whose Ifrit masters order strikes against the Azer kingdom. Oh, okay. So a little bit of politics and stuff going on here. Uh, Enemies of the Ifrit. I wonder why they're enemies of the Ifrit. Long ago, the Ifrit and the Azers were allies. Azers helped to create the City of Brass, forging that home of the Ifrit into one of the most wondrous places in creation. When the Azers had finished their work, the Ifrit betrayed them, making a failed attempt to enslave the Azers so they could protect the secrets of the city. Despite occasional raids and skirmishes, however, the two sides have so far refrained from all-out conflict. The Azers believe that only the threat of them revealing the hidden ways into the City of Brass keeps the Ifrit in check. Oh, oh, a line right there. Ding, 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 ding. If you are a DM, there is a great little thread you can pull on if you want to have a campaign that delves into the elemental plane of fire. Ooh, maybe there's something in the City of Brass that they have to find. Well, I wonder who could help them get into the City of Brass. Maybe the Azer. All right, master of metal and gems. Azers are masterful artisans and create beautiful works from gems and precious metals found in their volcanic habitat. They rate the value of such treasures above all other things, sometimes dispatching parties across the plains to seek out rare metals and gemstones. And when they're called by magic, the material plane is typically to help forge an elaborate magical item or work of art, for it is said that their skill in such craft knows no equal. Yet another thread you can pull on. If you want to put an Azer in your campaign, well, maybe somebody, maybe an antagonist of the party, maybe an ally of the party, needs a master craftsman. And they would like a master craftsman who is willing to help. So they don't want to go summon an Azer out of the elemental plane of fire. No, 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 no. They want to send the adventurers into the elemental plane of fire with gifts for the Azer and say, please come back with us. Please help somebody create this. Or, on the other hand, if it's an antagonist, they may have Azer slaves that they enslaved on the elemental plane of fire. And as the adventurers go poking around, hey, why are these beings with their hair on fire? Literally, their hair on fire. Why are they in cages and in shackles? Well, let's go talk to them. So you could really play with a lot of things if you're a DM if you want to put these in an adventure. So what kind of creature are they? In D&D, if you go into the monster manual, or if you go into any monster source book in D&D 5e, every creature has a type. And the reason they have a type is because creatures of a certain type all have similar characteristics. Azers are considered elementals. They're creatures native to the elemental planes. Some are little more than animate masses of their respective elements. Uh, Classic thing, elemental. A water elemental is just a big, huge mass of water that has a vaguely humanoid shape and goes around and suffocates things by trying to drown them. Fire elemental goes around trying to burn things, etc., etc. Others have biological forms infused with elemental energy. Well, okay, kind of probably Azer would fall into that. The races of genies, including Jinn and Efreet, form the most important civilizations on the elemental planes. Other creatures include Azers, invisible stalkers, and water weirds. Hey, Azers even made it into the description of what a um, elemental being is. Okay, now here's one of the fun parts of the show where we are going to go and we are going to look back through the years at these sources. We are going to take a look at the Monster Manual 2 from AD&D, and we are going to look at what the Azer were like in those days. Okay, so Armor Class 2. Some of you may know that in the history of D&D, the lower the armor class, the better. Somewhere along the way, I think it was in 3rd edition, they flipped that around, and now in modern versions of D&D, the higher the armor class, the better. But um, it used to be that it was lower. Uh, they have a range of hit dice. There were not such things as challenge ratings back then, but you calculated the difficulty of the monster by its hit dice. So 2 plus 1 to 5 plus 4, that means 2 entire hit dice and then 1 extra hit point, or 5 entire hit dice and 4 extra hit points. Um, then treasure, uh, and then special attacks by heat, and they're immune to fire. They resist magic. 4.5 to 5 feet tall, and so they here's their various hit dice breakdowns. They have bonuses to hit and bonus to damage. And so the people of Amemam, people of this king, this legendary king, dwell in small groups. Typical abode being a tower worked from the natural basalt of their realm. Uh, 20 or more are encountered. In their habitation will be 2 of the largest of normal size, a noble and 40 to 70 non-combatant females, and young are also there. In general, Azer are unfriendly, taciturn, and lack compassion. They're greedy, and for clear purple or red gems, they may agree to reasonable requests. Once given, the word of an Azer is solid bond. Okay, so that is what the Azer were like in first edition. Now we go to third edition, and pay no attention to this because this is a different monster here. But we're looking at the stat blocks here. So their hit dice were 2d8 plus 2, so 11 hit points. Armor class 23. So this is where the armor class, the higher you get, the better it is. So an armor class 23, they're pretty tough little guys. They attack with a warhammer plus 3 for 1d8 plus 1, plus 1 fire damage. And that little X3 means that on a critical hit, they do 3 times the damage. So strength 13, dex 13, con 13. So, kind of an average stat block, a little bit above average stat block. They have the power attack, challenge rating of 2. And the creature resembles a dwarf with a hair of fire and beard of flames. It has brass-colored skin and appears to have been forged from the fire and metal. They use broad-headed spears or well-crafted hammers in combat. When unarmed, they attempt to grapple foes. Azers rarely provoke a fight, except to relieve a foe of gems, which they love. If threatened, they'll fight to the death, but they see the value of taking prisoners themselves. And the Azer's body is intensely hot, so its unarmed attacks deal fire damage. and its metallic weapons also conduct this heat. Now, here is what the Azer looks like in 3rd edition. So, and we talked a little bit about their society. And 3rd edition did this really interesting thing where for um, almost every single humanoid appearing monster, and for even some of the monsters that don't appear humanoid in the monster manual, they gave you guidelines of how you could turn this monster into a playable character. And 5th edition has not given us any guidance on that. And I kind of, you know, I'll trust myself in a one-off to make a monster that's balanced for a particular combat against a particular party, but I get a little shy about creating an entire race of creatures based on kind of an NPC stat block and then turning that into something that's a playable race. That question has come up to me a few times. It's like I would really have to go through. See what they did in 3rd edition and then try to come up with some kind of formula to make that work in 5th edition to see how you could basically take a monster template and turn it into a playable character. And I just don't have the time to do that. I've got too many other things to do. Got my day job and all the other kind of stuff. So uh, at this point, I haven't done that in 5e. But if you are a 3rd edition player or a 3rd edition DM, um, take a look at the monster manual from 3e and see how they give you sort of guidance on turning monsters into playable characters. So, if you have one of those players that really just wants to play something off the wall and wacky and totally out of left field, um, you get some good ideas out of there. All right, now we come to 4th edition. And 4th edition, they loved to take a monster and they loved to build variants of that monster in 4th edition. And the Azer is no exception. So, um, the Azer lore, that's where this comes from, about the fact that they were, that all dwarves at one time were slaves to giants. So, there are several different classes of Azers. There's I think at least 5 or 6 different kinds of Azers. On this page alone, we have 3. So there's an Azer warrior, which is a level 17 minion. Um, Now notice 1 hit point. Every minion of any level in 4th edition always has 1 hit point. But they have pretty good defenses, an armor class of 31, fortitude of 30, reflex 26, will 27, and they resist 20 fire. And they hit with a warhammer. They they attack at plus 20 versus armor class, so they get plus 20 on their d20 roll. And they deal 7 fire damage on ongoing 3 fire damage save ends. So you put a bunch of minions out onto the battlefield as a 4E DM, and you hope a few of them hit the creatures. And a lot of times they'll have this ongoing damage thing, and so then you just start having that ticking damage going on your PCs. And 1 hit always wipes out the minions, but if they get that first hit in, they've done their job, and then you move on to the more beefy opponents. So you have an Azer foot soldier, which is a level 14 soldier, 141 hit points, bloodied value of 70, armor class 30, and resist 30 fire. They have that same plus 20 versus AC, 1d10 plus 4 damage, plus 1d8 fire damage, and a target is marked until the end of the Azer foot soldier's next turn. Marking is a mechanical thing in both 4th edition and 5th edition. And then you have the Azer Rager. Uh, and he's a level 15 brute, 181 hit points, bloodied value of 90, armor class 27, immune to fear, and they resist 30 fire. Plus 18 versus AC to hit 1d6 plus 6 damage and ongoing fire damage, save ends. And they have this Chains of Flame that's a burst. And you can only use this when they are bloodied. So um, in 4th edition, Bloodied almost always had uh, a mechanical effect, and a lot of monsters did this thing that once they get bloodied, there are special abilities they can use. Uh, that's not so much. It doesn't happen really in 5th edition, but bloodied, I think bloodies is nice because it tells you as a player, is this is this enemy above half health or are they at half health or below? And it stands to reason that if somebody's really hurt, you could probably tell that if you were fighting against them. And so I just use that to help show the players, okay, these guys are really hurt. These guys have been hurt a little bit, but they're not so bad off. Then we have an Azer Taskmaster and Azer Beastlord. So the Azer Taskmaster is a level 17 controller, and armor class 31, hit points 165, clinging flames. And it's an immediate reaction when an enemy within 5 squares takes fire damage, and the enemy takes ongoing fire damage for a save. The scourge that it uses is plus 22, 1d6 plus 5 damage plus 2d6 fire damage. And the Azer Beastlord is a level 17 soldier. 167 hit points, AC 32. They have a big battle axe, plus 22 versus AC, 1d10 plus 5, plus an additional 1d8 fire damage, and the target is marked. Alright, and on my command, each allied elemental beast within 5 squares of the Azer Beastlord makes a basic attack as a free action, provided the elemental beast is flanking an enemy and can both see and hear the Azer Beastlord. And then one allied elemental beast within 5 squares of the Azer Beastlord recharges an encounter or daily power at the Beastlord's choice. And here's some pictures of those guys. All right. And now we come to 5th edition. Okay, so what do we learn about Azers in 5th edition? Well, they're armor class 17, 39 hit points. They are pretty strong and have kind of an above average balanced stat block. They get +4 to their con saving throws. They're immune to being poisoned and immune to fire damage. They speak Ignan. We talked about that with the elemental language of the elemental plane of fire. Heated body. A creature that touches the Azer or hits it with a melee attack while within 5 feet will take 1d10 fire damage. And then when the Azer hits with a metal melee weapon, it deals an extra 1d6 fire damage, which is included in the attack. And it sheds bright light in a 10-foot radius and dim light for another 10 feet. And then they just go and attack with their Warhammer. They attack +5 for 1d8 plus 3 bludgeoning damage, plus an additional 1d6 fire damage. And then we talked a little bit about the lore of these Azers. Okay. All right, so now we're going to switch back to our slides here, and we're going to talk a little bit about how you can use Azers in encounters. And if anybody has, I'll say this now. If anybody has questions about the Azers, go ahead and put them in chat. There is a specific spot towards the end of the um, show where we talk about any questions that people have. So if you've thought of any questions about them, just throw them in the chat and I'll look at that in a few minutes and we will answer those questions. So as a DM, you want to put Azers in your campaign and you want to figure out how to create a hard or challenging encounter with these creatures for a party of 5 PCs by level. And I just I try to think of one of these creatures being a hard encounter for a party. Where would that put them? Obviously, if you have higher level adventurers, you're going to need to throw more of these guys in there. And you can either use the tools in the DM guide to build the encounter, or you can go out on the web to find something like Kobold Fight Club, which is a personal favorite of mine. And that will let you plug in the party level, the challenge rating of your monsters, and then you can kind of build and see how many monsters you need to make it an easy, a medium, a hard, or a deadly encounter. So, if you want to make a hard encounter for a level 1 party, you can take one single Azer, put that out there, and that will be a hard encounter for a level 1 party. Now, if the party is level 2, it becomes an easy encounter. And if you want to make it a hard encounter, add one smoke method, which is another type of elemental creature, which kind of has it's kind of a it's kind of from that elemental zone that is the border between the elemental plane of fire and elemental plane of air, is where the smoke method comes from. And then if it's a level 3 party, you can add a second Azer to make it a hard encounter. Or if you don't want to add another Azer, you can add up to 7 um, smoke methods or steam methods. And steam methods then are those creatures that live in that zone on the border between the elemental plane of fire and the elemental plane of water. So the smoke is between fire and air, and steam is between fire and water. All right, and now where would you place these guys in a campaign? Okay, so you want to use methods, you know, or I'm sorry, you want to use Azers. You know that they're probably going to be geared towards a low-level party, unless you just have a whole mess of Azer. And that would be a really um, that could be a big challenge for a larger party or a higher level party. So there's a lot of lore, as we've seen, to draw on from Azers across many editions. So um, we spoke briefly. You could have Azers appear as craftsmen that are called by allies or antagonists of the party, and they may require materials. Um, the party may have been sent to sabotage a project that an antagonist is working on, and they come and they find out that there's a bunch of Azer craftsmen that are working on that project. Now, those Azers may have been hired and they may have given their word, and so they may be very loath to break their word against the person that they've agreed to work with, or they might have been enslaved, and the party might come along and be able to do something about setting them free. Of course, that's all entirely up to the DM, however you want to do that. And you could also delve into the aspect of the war with the Efreet, or leverage their knowledge of the secrets of the City of Brass. So we also briefly talked about this. If you have to send your party to the elemental plane of fire, well, City of Brass is one of those places on the elemental plane of fire. If they have to go to that Ifriti city and they want to figure out how they can find their way around without getting spotted and stomped on by a big fiery Efreet. Maybe they could go see the Azer. Maybe there's something the Azer wants them to do. And in exchange for doing something, the Azer might give them some information about how to navigate safely through the city of Brass. And if you're on the elemental plane of fire, just minding your own business, going along, you may just run into a patrol of Azer if you stray too close to uh, one of their fortresses or to one of their kingdoms. And if you're carrying a lot of gems, the Azers may be, nice gems you got there. Shame if something would happen to them. You know what? We'll just take those for safekeeping. And then the party might have a showdown then with those Azer. All right. So those are just a few ideas of how you might use them in campaigns. There are as many different. I'm sure there's as many different ways of using Azer in a campaign as there are DMs. All coming up with clever ideas out of their twisted little heads. Okay. So now you want to reskin a monster. You like the stat block of the Azer, but you don't need a fire monster. You need something else. So what could you use that stat block for? So these guys present all kinds of interesting possibilities for reskinning. Again, going back to the different lore from the different editions. Uh, for example, if we ask ourselves if there are fire elemental dwarves or elemental fire dwarves, then why not elemental earth dwarves, or elemental water dwarves, or elemental air dwarves for that? And if you like the idea of dwarves, maybe you could have abyssal dwarves that are somewhere from the nine, the nine plane or the planes of the nine hells, or from the demonic abyss, or you could have celestial dwarves that are from some of the astral, like some sort of astral dwarves. A, there's lore about something in D&D called astral diamonds. Well, I wonder who mines astral diamonds. Maybe it's astral dwarves. So you might be able to take this stat block, and what you would do with all these things is just simply take that energy source, the fire, and just swap it out for something else. So um, for something celestial, it might be good to swap it out from fire to radiant. For earth elemental dwarves, from fire to acid. From air elemental dwarves is like fire to thunder or fire to lightning. All these kinds of things that you can do with that. And you could then also say, well, there's nothing really about these monsters that is specifically dwarf-like except their appearance. So you could just reskin them as elemental fire elves, or elemental fire orcs, or elemental fire whatever, and take the warhammer and replace it with something else, and take the lore about the craftsman and replace that with something else, and voila, now you have an elemental fire elf, and an elf with flaming ears and flaming hair and flaming eyebrows. Uh, whatever. So that would be something that you could do with this. All right. Okay, now it is time to look at the Q&A. I do not see any questions at the moment on the Azer. So I am going to talk a little bit about the wrap up, and then I will come back and I will look and I will see if somebody has posted any questions at that point. So, um, this has been Monster Monday. I have been DM Gallibond. Tonight we've been talking about the Azer. Right here on this Twitch channel, you guys can see me 3 more times during the week. Although this week, we're not going to have a Thursday game because that's Christmas Eve. Um Sundays, we have our Walker of Waterdeep game at 2 p.m. Eastern in the afternoon. Thursday nights, normally we have our Sword Coast Chronicles game. Like I said, that's going to be on hiatus this week because of the holiday. Um, we think we're probably going to play on New Year's Eve because, with 2020 being all the weirdness that it is, people are limiting what they're doing for the holidays. So, you know, they're getting together with family on Christmas, but then, you know, not doing anything really for New Year's. So, we will probably play Thursday night, New Year's Eve. And then on Saturday we have our original D&D edition game, The Lost Mine of original D&D, which what we're doing is we're going through the story of the Lost Mine of Phandelver, which is a familiar story to a lot of people. And my philosophy is it's okay if it's if you're familiar with the story because this is a completely different rule set and the rules work really, really, really different. Um, for instance, the other night the party walked into a combat, and there was a caster in the combat, and the caster used the hold person spell. Well, in fifth edition, hold person lasts for 1 minute, requires concentration, and it focuses on one individual person. But in original D&D, it wasn't like that. No concentration. The effect lasts for 90 minutes if you fail your save, and you can get up to 4 creatures at once. So now 4 of the party members and their allies are uh, for the next hour and a half while the battle is continuing. So this is what I'm saying that uh, changing the addition and telling the same story completely different way that the story could play out because not everything happens as you might expect it to happen if you were playing by just traditional um, rules of 5th edition. All right, all of those, like I said, are here live on this Twitch channel. I have a YouTube channel, and there are archives of everything that I do. Most of the weekday stuff is all current there because it does get posted daily. The actual play games, uh, there's a little bit of a lag. So you go on there and you can watch some older episodes, but don't expect to find last week's episode up on YouTube at this point. Um, Most recent one you'll find is probably a couple of months old as I, get around to actually getting those um, taken from the recordings and posted up on YouTube. So let me see. Did we have any questions? No, we did not have any questions on the Azer. All right. Well, thank you all very much. Really appreciate those of you who stopped by tonight and watched live. Also, really appreciate those of you who come by later in the week or in future weeks over on YouTube. Hello, future people. And watch the archives of this show. And it's always fun when you hear comments from somebody, one that you did a few months ago, and somebody says, "Hey, I took this and I used it, and something. Thanks for the information." So always appreciate hearing that. So then, I will wish everybody that celebrates a Merry Christmas, That's coming up at the end of this week. If you do not celebrate, then please, I hope you have a joyous and safe and happy holiday season. We will be back next Monday for Monster Monday before the new year. That will be the last one in 2020. And if I know what direction we're going to go with Monster Monday next year, if we're going to make any changes, I will let you know by next Monday. But for now, I will just sign off as I always do on the show by reminding you to watch out for the monsters under the bed. Good night, everybody.